The dust had barely settled on her father's grave when Daniella Owens saw the three riders coming up the trail, their silhouettes black against the setting sun, and she knew they had come to finish what her father had started 20 years ago. She stood on the porch of the ranch house, her hands gripping the weathered railing so hard her knuckles turned white. The year was 1883, and Hangtown, California had changed its name to Placerville 2 decades prior, trying to shed its violent past. But some things never truly died in the old mining territory, and blood debts were among them. Her father, Douglas Owens, had been a U.S. Marshal back in the gold rush days. He had done what he thought was right, rounding up the Morrison gang after they had robbed the Wells Fargo stage and killed 2 guards in cold blood. 3 brothers had hanged for it, dancing at the end of ropes on the old oak tree that had given Hangtown its grim name. But there had been a 4th brother, just a boy then, who had watched his kin die while hidden in the crowd. Now that boy was a man, and he was coming for his revenge. Daniella was 23 years old, unmarried by choice rather than lack of suitors. She had spent the last 5 years caring for her ailing father, watching him waste away from the consumption that had hollowed out his chest and stolen his breath. He had died 3 days ago, and she had buried him beside her mother on the hill, overlooking their modest cattle ranch. She had thought she would finally have peace. She had been wrong. The riders came closer, and she could make out their faces now. The one in the middle was unmistakable. Cyrus Morrison had his brother's eyes, pale blue and cold as winter ice. He was tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar. The 2 men flanking him were hired guns, she guessed, mercenaries with dead eyes and quick hands. Daniella felt her heart hammering against her ribs. She was alone on the ranch. Her 2 hired hands had gone into town for supplies and would not return until tomorrow. She had a rifle inside, her father's old Winchester, but she had never shot a man in her life. She did not know if she could. The riders stopped 20 feet from the porch. Cyrus Morrison dismounted slowly, his spurs chinking in the dust. He looked up at her with those ice-chip eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was rough like gravel underfoot. "Miss Owens, I expect you know why I am here." Daniella lifted her chin. Her father had taught her never to show fear, even when terror was clawing at her insides. "My father did his duty. He upheld the law. Your brothers were murderers." "They were young men who made a mistake," Cyrus said, his jaw tightening. "The guards were not supposed to die. It was supposed to be easy money. But things went wrong, and my brothers paid with their lives while the man who pulled the trigger walked free because he turned witness against them." "That is not my fault," Daniella said, though her voice wavered slightly. "And it was not my father's fault either. He did what any lawman would do." "Maybe so," Cyrus replied, "but I made a promise to myself the day I watched them hang. I promised I would make Douglas Owens suffer the way I suffered. I would take from him what he took from me." "He is already dead," Daniella said. "Your revenge is meaningless now." Cyrus smiled then, but there was no warmth in it. "I did not come here to kill a dead man, Miss Owens. I came here to take everything that was his. This ranch, these cattle, and you." The threat hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Daniella took a step back, her hand moving toward the door. But before she could reach it, a voice rang out from the side of the house, calm and steady as stone. "I reckon you will have to go through me first." All heads turned. A man stepped out from the shadow of the barn, leading a paint horse by the reins. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscled build of someone who had spent his life working hard. His hair was the color of wheat in late summer, and his eyes were a deep brown, warm and steady. He wore dusty trail clothes, a leather vest over a blue cotton shirt, and a gun belt slung low on his hips. The Colt Peacemaker holstered there looked well used but immaculately maintained. Daniella had never seen him before in her life. Cyrus Morrison's eyes narrowed. "This does not concern you, stranger. Ride on while you still can." The man walked forward with an easy, confident stride, stopping between Cyrus and the porch. "Name is Jackson Yates. I am making it my concern." "You are a fool," one of the hired guns said, his hand drifting toward his weapon. Jackson did not look at him. His eyes stayed locked on Cyrus. "Maybe, but I do not cotton to 3 armed men threatening a woman alone. Call it a character flaw." "She is not your problem," Cyrus said. "She is now," Jackson replied. The tension stretched tight as a bowstring. Daniella could see the calculation in Cyrus Morrison's eyes, weighing the odds, measuring the stranger. Whatever he saw there must have given him pause, because after a long moment he stepped back toward his horse. "This is not over," Cyrus said, swinging back into the saddle. "I have waited 20 years. I can wait a little longer." "You do that," Jackson said evenly. "But when you come back, remember what I told you. You want to hurt this woman, you go through me first." Cyrus stared at him for another heartbeat, then wheeled his horse around. The 3 riders thundered off down the trail, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Daniella realized she had been holding her breath. She let it out in a rush, her legs suddenly weak. She grabbed the porch railing again to steady herself. Jackson turned to look at her, and his expression softened. "You all right, miss?" "I do not know," she admitted. Her voice was shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. "Who are you? Why did you do that?" "I told you my name," he said. "As for why, well, I was raised to believe a man stands up when he sees something wrong. Those men meant you harm, could not just ride by." "You could have been killed," Daniella said. Jackson shrugged. "Could have been, was not though." Despite everything, Daniella felt a small smile tug at her lips. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Mr. Yates." "Most folks would say foolish," he admitted, "but I have gotten by so far." Daniella studied him more carefully now. He had a good face, honest and open, with laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. There was a scar on his chin, pale against his tanned skin, and his hands were calloused from hard work. He looked like a cowboy, probably a drifter moving from ranch to ranch. "Where did you come from?" she asked. "Been riding up from the Sacramento Valley," Jackson said. "Heard there might be work up in these parts. Saw your place from the road and thought I would ask if you were hiring." "You have a talent for timing," Daniella said dryly. "So I have been told," Jackson replied, and this time his smile reached his eyes. Daniella made a decision. "I do need help. My 2 regular hands are good men, but they are getting on in years. The work is hard and the pay is not much, but you would have a bunk and 3 meals a day." Jackson touched the brim of his hat. "That would suit me just fine, Miss Owens." "Daniella," she said, "if you are going to work here, you might as well call me by my name." "Then you should call me Jack," he replied. "Only my mother called me Jackson, usually when I was in trouble." "Very well, Jack," Daniella said. She felt some of the tension leaving her shoulders, though a knot of worry still sat heavy in her stomach. Cyrus Morrison would be back. She knew it as surely as she knew the sun would rise tomorrow. But at least now she was not facing him alone. Over the following days, Jackson Yates proved himself to be everything Daniella could have hoped for in a ranch hand. He was up before dawn, working until dusk, and he seemed to have an instinct for the work that spoke of long experience. He mended fences, tended the cattle, repaired the barn roof where it had been leaking, and did it all without complaint. The 2 older hands, Pete and Samuel, took to him immediately. Pete, who was nearing 60 with a grizzled beard and a game leg from an old riding accident. said Jack reminded him of his own son who had gone east to try his fortune in San Francisco. Good to have young blood around here again, Pete said one evening as they sat around the bunkhouse table playing cards. This place was getting too quiet. Daniella found herself watching Jack more than she probably should. She would catch herself looking out the kitchen window while preparing meals, her eyes finding him in the corral working with the horses or out in the pasture checking the herd. There was something about the way he moved, confident but never arrogant, strong but gentle when the situation called for it. He had a way with the animals too. The horses responded to him like he was speaking their language. Even her father's old stallion, a temperamental beast that had thrown more than one rider, calmed under Jack's touch. One afternoon, about a week after he had arrived, Daniella brought a pitcher of cold water out to where Jack was digging post holes for a new section of fence. The day was hot, the California sun beating down mercilessly from a cloudless sky. Jack had removed his shirt, and she tried not to stare at the play of muscles across his back and shoulders as he worked. "Thought you might be thirsty," she said, pouring water into a tin cup. Jack straightened, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. "Much obliged," he said, taking the cup and draining it in long gulps. "This heat reminds me of Arizona. Spent a summer working a ranch down there a few years back. Thought I might melt right into the ground." "What brought you to California?" Daniella asked. She found herself genuinely curious about him, about where he had come from and what he had seen. Jack refilled the cup and drank more slowly this time. "Been moving around since I was 15, he said. "My folks had a small farm in Kansas, but my father died when I was 14. Cholera. My mother followed him 6 months later. Think she died of a broken heart as much as anything. I tried to keep the farm going, but the bank took it when I could not make the payments. Been drifting ever since, working where I can, moving on when the work dries up or when I get restless." "That sounds lonely," Daniella said softly. Jack shrugged. "Sometimes it is, but there is a freedom in it too. No ties, no obligations, just the road and whatever is over the next hill." "Then why stop here?" Daniella asked. Jack looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his eyes made her heart skip. "Been asking myself that same question," he admitted. "Maybe I got tired of moving, or maybe I found a reason to stay put for a while." The air between them suddenly felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. Daniella felt heat rising to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the sun. "I should get back to the house," she said, taking the empty cup from his hand. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a spark run up her arm. "Supper will be ready in a few hours." "Looking forward to it," Jack said. "Your cooking is about the best I have had in 10 years of wandering." Daniella smiled despite herself. "Flattery will get you an extra helping of pie." "Then I am going to flatter you as much as possible," Jack replied with a grin. Daniella walked back to the house, very aware of his eyes on her back. She was not sure what was happening between them, but she could not deny that something was. Jack Yates had come into her life at the darkest moment, appearing like an answer to a prayer she had not even known she was praying. He made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her father had first fallen ill. But more than that, he made her feel something else, something warm and fluttering and completely unexpected. She was falling for him, and that terrified her almost as much as Cyrus Morrison did. That night, after supper had been cleared and the dishes washed, Daniella sat on the porch watching the stars come out. The air had cooled to a pleasant temperature, and the crickets were singing in the grass. She heard footsteps and turned to see Jack climbing the porch steps. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Not at all," Daniella said, gesturing to the chair beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds. Finally, Jack spoke. You have been worried all day. I can see it in your eyes. You think Morrison is coming back soon." Daniella nodded. "He will come. He is just planning, figuring out the best way to strike. My father always said the most dangerous enemy is the one who waits and thinks." "Your father was a marshal," Jack said. "It was not a question." "For 20 years, Daniella confirmed. "He was a good man, Jack. He upheld the law fairly. The Morrison brothers had killed 2 men in that robbery. They deserved to hang, but Cyrus cannot see that. All he sees is that his brothers died and someone has to pay." "Grief can twist a man," Jack said quietly, "make him see the world all wrong. Have you lost people?" Daniella asked, then immediately regretted the intrusion. "I am sorry, that is too personal." "No, it is all right," Jack said. "I told you about my parents. Truth is, I lost someone else too. A girl I was going to marry back when I was 19. Her name was Emily. She caught scarlet fever and was gone within a week. I thought my heart would never heal." "I am so sorry," Daniella whispered. "It was a long time ago," Jack said. 8 years now, I have made my peace with it, but I remember how it felt, like someone had carved out a piece of my soul. I can understand why Cyrus Morrison is so bent on revenge, even if I cannot condone it." "He threatened to take me," Daniella said, the words coming out smaller than she intended. "What do you think he meant by that?" Jack's jaw tightened. "Nothing good. But like I told him, he will have to go through me first, and I do not plan on making that easy." "Why are you doing this?" Daniella asked, turning to face him. "You do not owe me anything. You could leave right now, ride off to the next town, the next job. Why stay and put yourself in danger?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and earnest. "When I saw you standing on that porch with those 3 men riding toward you, something happened inside me. I cannot explain it exactly. It was like something clicked into place, like I had been searching for something my whole life without knowing it, and suddenly there it was. There you were." Daniella's breath caught in her throat. "Jack, I know it is fast," he continued. "I know I have only been here a week. But I have lived enough life to know when something is real. And this, what I feel when I look at you, this is real." Daniella felt tears prickling at her eyes. "I feel it too," she admitted. "I have been trying to tell myself it is just gratitude, that I am just relieved to have help. But it is more than that. When you are near me, I feel like I can breathe easier. When you are out working and I cannot see you, I find myself looking for you. I do not know what this is, but it scares me." "Why does it scare you?" Jack asked gently. "Because I could lose you," Daniella said. "My father is barely in the ground. My mother died when I was 12. Emily died on you. People we care about leave us, Jack. They die and they leave us alone." Jack reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm and rough with calluses, and his touch sent shivers up her arm. "That is true," he said. "We could lose each other. Tomorrow, next week, 50 years from now. But we could also have something beautiful for whatever time we are given. Is not that worth the risk?" Daniella looked down at their joined hands, then up into his eyes. Those warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through to her soul. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, it is." Jack smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Then let us take this one day at a time, face whatever comes together." "Together," Daniella repeated, and the word felt like a promise. 2 more weeks passed in a kind of golden haze. The work on the ranch continued, the cattle grazed peacefully, and Daniella and Jack grew closer with each passing day. They would find excuses to be near each other, their conversations stretching longer, their touches becoming more frequent and more meaningful. Pete and Samuel noticed and approved, giving each other knowing looks and making themselves scarce when the 2 young people wanted privacy. Jack told her stories of his travels, painting pictures of the places he had seen and the people he had met. He had worked cattle drives in Texas, mined for silver in Nevada, even spent 6 months on a fishing boat in Oregon before deciding that the sea was not for him. He made her laugh with tales of mishaps and close calls, and sometimes his stories turned serious, revealing glimpses of a thoughtful man who had seen both the best and worst of human nature. Daniella, in turn, opened up about her own life. She told him about her mother, a gentle woman who had loved books and music and had taught Daniella to read before she was 5. She spoke of the loneliness of watching her father slowly die, feeling helpless as the strong man who had raised her wasted away. She shared her fears about running the ranch alone, her doubts about whether she was capable of holding on to her father's legacy. "You are stronger than you think," Jack told her one evening as they walked along the creek that ran through the eastern pasture. "I have seen you work all day without complaint, manage the books, handle Pete and Samuel with kindness but firmness. You are doing everything right." "It helps having you here," Daniella admitted. "I do not feel so alone anymore." Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. They were standing under a willow tree, its branches hanging down around them like a curtain. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber. "Daniella," Jack said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" "I have been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you on that porch," he said. "Maybe even before that. Maybe I was falling toward you my whole life and just did not know it until I found you. I know it is soon. I know we have only known each other a few weeks. But I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love you." Daniella felt like her heart might burst. "I love you too," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I tried not to. I tried to be sensible and cautious, but I cannot help it. I love you, Jack." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle, and leaned down to kiss her. His lips were soft and warm, and the kiss was sweet and tender, full of promise and hope. Daniella melted into him, her arms going around his neck, and for that perfect moment, nothing else existed. Not the ranch, not the threats, not the past or the uncertain future. Just the two of them and this beautiful, terrifying, wonderful thing growing between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. Daniella laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Yes, yes, of course yes." They kissed again, deeper this time, and Daniella felt like she was flying. After so much loss and fear, she had found something precious and real. She had found Jack and he had found her, and together they would face whatever came. But Cyrus Morrison had not forgotten his vow, and the peace they had found was about to be shattered. The attack came on a Wednesday morning, 2 days after Jack had proposed. Daniella was in the kitchen making breakfast when she heard shouting from the barn. Her blood went cold. She grabbed the rifle her father had kept by the door and ran outside. Cyrus Morrison and his 2 hired guns had returned, but this time they had brought reinforcements. There were 8 men total, all armed, all hard-looking. They had Pete and Samuel pinned down in the barn, and Jack was crouched behind a water trough near the corral, his Colt in hand. Cyrus sat on his horse in the middle of the yard, looking perfectly at ease. "Time to settle accounts, Miss Owens," he called out. "Send out your cowboy and come with us, and I will let your hired men live." "Go to hell," Daniella shouted back, raising the rifle. "That was not the answer I was hoping for," Cyrus said. He nodded to one of his men, who fired a shot that splintered the porch railing inches from where Daniella stood. Before anyone could fire again, Jack stood up from behind the trough. "Hold your fire," he called out. His voice was calm, but Daniella could hear the steel underneath. "Morrison, you said you wanted revenge. You wanted to take from Douglas Owens what he took from you. Well, you cannot touch him now. He is dead and buried. So what exactly do you think this is going to accomplish? I will take his daughter, Cyrus said coldly. I will take his land. I will erase everything he built and salt the earth so nothing grows here again. That is what this will accomplish. Or, Jack said, taking a step forward, you could face me one-on-one. You and me, pistols. If you win, you can have the satisfaction of knowing you beat the man who stood against you. If I win, you ride away and never come back. Cyrus laughed. You think I am fool enough to give you a fair chance? I have 8 men here. And I think you are a coward who hides behind numbers because you know you cannot beat me alone, Jack said, his voice cutting like a blade. Your brothers died because they were stupid and reckless. You have spent 20 years blaming everyone but them for their own choices. But deep down, you know the truth. They were guilty and they paid the price, and you have wasted your whole life nursing a grudge instead of living. Cyrus's face went dark with rage. You do not know anything about me or my brothers. I know that real men face their problems head-on, Jack replied. I know that cowards burn and steal and terrorize women. Which one are you, Morrison? The silence that followed was thick with tension. Daniella could see the calculation in Cyrus's eyes, the war between pride and pragmatism. Finally, he dismounted. Fine, he said, unbuckling his gun belt and handing it to one of his men. He strapped on a different belt, one with a single Remington revolver. We do this the old way. 20 paces, turn and draw, but when I kill you, the girl is mine. When I kill you, you and your men ride out, Jack countered, and you never come back here or go near Daniella again. Agreed, Cyrus said. No, Daniella screamed. Jack, do not do this, please. Jack turned to look at her, and his eyes were full of love and sorrow. I have to, he said quietly. This is the only way to end it, trust me. Tears were streaming down Daniella's face, but she nodded. She did trust him. With her life, with her heart, with everything she had. Jack and Cyrus walked to opposite ends of the yard and turned to face each other. One of Cyrus's men stepped forward to act as referee. 20 paces on my count, the man said. No firing until both men have turned. Any man who breaks the rules will be shot down by the rest of us. Understood? Both men nodded. 1, the man began to count. Jack and Cyrus began walking away from each other, their steps measured and even. 2, 3, 4. Daniella's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She could not breathe, could not think. All she could do was watch the man she loved walking toward potential death. 5, 6, 7. Jack's hand hung loose at his side, relaxed but ready. His face was calm, focused. He looked like a different person in that moment, dangerous and deadly in a way Daniella had never seen before. 8, 9, 10. Cyrus Morrison's shoulders were tight, his movements jerky with tension. He was fast, Daniella could tell, but there was anger in every line of his body. Anger made people reckless. 11, 12, 13. Please, Daniella prayed to a god she was not sure was listening. Please do not let him die. Not now, not when I just found him. 14, 15, 16. The world seemed to slow down. Every detail was sharp and clear. The dust motes floating in the morning light, the nervous shifting of the horses. The creak of leather as one of the hired guns adjusted his stance. 17, 18, 19, this was it. The next second would determine everything. 20, turn and fire. Both men spun. Both drew. The 2 shots sounded almost like one, a crack that echoed across the valley. Smoke billowed from both guns for a moment. Everything was still. Then Cyrus Morrison stumbled backward, a red stain spreading across his chest. He looked down at the wound in disbelief, then his legs gave out and he crumpled to the ground. Jack stood tall, his gun still raised. a thin line of blood trickling from his left arm where Cyrus's bullet had grazed him. Daniella did not remember crossing the yard, but suddenly she was in Jack's arms, sobbing against his chest. "You are alive. Thank God you are alive." Jack holstered his gun and wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. "I am all right," he murmured into her hair. "It is over now. It is over." Cyrus's men had rushed to their leader. One of them looked up and shook his head. Cyrus Morrison was dead. The man who had acted as referee stood and faced the others. "It was a fair fight. Morrison lost. We ride out, boys. That was the deal." To Daniella's relief, the other men nodded. They were mercenaries, not avengers. With Cyrus dead, they had no reason to continue the fight. Within minutes, they had loaded Cyrus's body across his horse and were riding away, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. Pete and Samuel emerged from the barn, both looking shaken but unhurt. "That was the bravest damn thing I ever saw," Pete said, clapping Jack on the shoulder. "Or the stupidest?" "Have not decided which yet." "Probably both," Jack admitted. He winced as Daniella touched his injured arm. "Come inside," she said. "Let me clean that wound." In the kitchen, Daniella carefully rolled up Jack's sleeve and examined the bullet graze. It was shallow, more of a burn than anything serious, but it still needed to be cleaned and bandaged. As she worked, her hands were shaking. "I thought I was going to lose you," she said, her voice breaking. "When he drew his gun, I thought my heart was going to stop." "I am sorry I scared you," Jack said softly. "But I meant what I said. He had to go through me first." "You could have died," Daniella said, wrapping the bandage around his arm with more force than necessary. "But I did not," Jack pointed out. "And now Morrison is gone. His revenge died with him." "You are safe now, Daniella, truly safe." Daniella tied off the bandage and then collapsed against him, her head on his uninjured shoulder. "I cannot lose you," she whispered. "I just cannot." "You will not," Jack promised, stroking her hair. "I am not going anywhere." "I told you, I am yours for as long as you will have me." "Forever then," Daniella said fiercely. "I want you forever." "Then forever it is," Jack replied, tilting her chin up to kiss her. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened, becoming almost desperate, a celebration of life and love and the fact that they had both survived to see another day. When they finally pulled apart, Daniella managed a shaky smile. "We should probably plan a wedding before we give Pete and Samuel something to gossip about." Jack laughed. "Probably wise. How does next month sound?" "Perfect," Daniella said. "Absolutely perfect." The wedding took place on a beautiful Saturday in late August. The local preacher came out to the ranch, and a small gathering of friends and neighbors filled the front yard. Daniella wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved in a trunk for all these years. It fit almost perfectly, needing only minor alterations. The white lace seemed to glow in the afternoon sun, and she had wildflowers woven into her dark hair. Jack stood waiting for her under an arch that Pete and Samuel had constructed, decorated with more wildflowers and ribbon. He wore a new suit purchased especially for the occasion, black with a crisp white shirt, and he looked more handsome than Daniella had ever seen him. His eyes lit up when he saw her walking toward him, and she saw him blink hard, fighting back emotion. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other in sickness and health, in good times and bad, for as long as they both lived. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Jack kissed her to the cheers and applause of their guests, and Daniella felt like her heart might explode with happiness. The celebration afterward was lively. Tables had been set up with food that neighbors had contributed, and someone had brought a fiddle. There was dancing and laughter, and more than a few toasts to the newlyweds. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Daniella and Jack slipped away from the party, walking hand in hand toward the creek. "Happy?" Jack asked, pulling her close. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Daniella replied. "A few months ago, I was alone and terrified. Now I have you and everything feels right with the world." "I know what you mean," Jack said. "I spent so many years drifting, never feeling like I belonged anywhere. But here with you, I finally feel like I've come home." They stood together as the stars began to appear overhead, wrapped in each other's arms, and Daniella silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought Jack to her ranch on that crucial day. He had saved her life in more ways than one, and she knew with absolute certainty that she would love him until her dying day. The first year of marriage was not without its challenges. Running a ranch was hard work, and there were times when money was tight or when problems seemed overwhelming. A drought that summer stressed the water supply. Several cattle were lost to disease. The barn roof needed replacing after a severe storm. But through it all, Jack and Daniella faced everything together, and their love only grew stronger. Jack proved to be not just a hard worker but a natural leader. The ranch began to thrive under his management, and they were able to hire 2 more hands by the following spring. Pete eventually retired, moving to town to live with his daughter, but Samuel stayed on, becoming almost like family. Daniella discovered that she had a talent for the business side of ranching. She handled the accounts, negotiated deals with buyers, and even started breeding horses as a side venture. The quality of their stock became known throughout the region, and they began to build a reputation as a reliable operation. But the best news came in the spring of 1885, nearly 2 years after they had married. Daniella realized she was pregnant. She told Jack one evening after supper, leading him out to the porch where they had first confessed their love for each other. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hands in hers. "What is it?" Jack asked, immediately concerned. "Are you all right?" "I am fine," Daniella said, smiling. "Better than fine, actually. Jack, we are going to have a baby." For a moment, Jack just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then a slow smile spread across his face, growing wider and wider until he was grinning like a fool. He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around until she was laughing and telling him to put her down before he made her dizzy. "A baby," he said, setting her down carefully and placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Daniella asked, though his reaction had made the answer obvious. "Happy," Jack repeated. "Daniella, I am beyond happy. I never thought I would have this. A wife I love, a home, and now a child. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Jack became almost comically protective, insisting that Daniella not overwork herself, constantly asking if she needed anything. She tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from a place of deep love and concern. As her belly grew, they spent the long evenings talking about the future, imagining what their child would be like. They argued playfully over names, eventually settling on James for a boy and Deanna for a girl, both names honoring family members they had lost. In December of 1885, during a cold snap that left frost on the windows, Daniella went into labor. The midwife from town arrived to help, and Jack paced the living room floor for 12 straight hours, wearing a path in the rug. Samuel and the other hands stayed in the bunkhouse, offering whispered prayers for mother and child. Finally, just after dawn, the lusty cry of a newborn filled the house. The midwife emerged from the bedroom with a smile. "You have a son, Mr. Yates. A big, healthy boy." Jack rushed into the bedroom to find Daniella propped up against the pillows, looking exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. When she pulled the blanket back, Jack got his first look at his son. James Douglas Yates had a shock of dark hair and his mother's delicate features, but when he opened his eyes, they were the same warm brown as his father's. Jack felt tears streaming down his face as he carefully took the baby in his arms. "Hello, James," he whispered. "I am your papa. And I promise I am going to love you and protect you and teach you to be a good man." Daniella watched them with tears in her own eyes. "We made a miracle," she said softly. "We made a family," Jack corrected, carefully handing James back to her and climbing onto the bed beside them. He wrapped his arms around both of them, and in that moment, he knew that everything in his life had led him to this. All the wandering, all the loneliness, all the loss, it had all been worth it to arrive here in this room with these two people who were his entire world. The years that followed were full and happy. James grew into an energetic, curious boy with his father's easy smile and his mother's quick mind. When he was 3, he gained a baby sister. Clara Josephine Yates arrived in the spring of 1888, a squalling bundle of determination and joy. Unlike her brother, Clara had blonde hair like her father and green eyes that seemed to see everything. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1890, they had expanded their holdings, purchasing the adjacent property when the owner decided to move back east. The Yates Ranch became one of the most successful operations in the county, known for quality cattle and fine horses. Jack and Daniella's love never faded or became routine. They still found time to walk down to the creek on warm evenings, to dance in the kitchen when the children were asleep, to steal kisses when they thought no one was watching. They had built something beautiful together, a life full of love and laughter and purpose. One evening in the summer of 1892, nearly 10 years after they had first met, Jack and Daniella sat on the porch watching James and Clara chase fireflies in the yard. James was now 6, tall for his age and already showing signs of becoming a skilled horseman. Clara, at 4, was a little whirlwind of energy, chattering constantly and into everything. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Daniella asked, leaning against Jack's shoulder. "If you had not come along that day, if you had just ridden past instead of stopping." "I think about it sometimes," Jack admitted, "but I do not think I could have ridden past. I think I was always meant to be here with you, like all the roads I traveled were just leading me to your door." "That is a beautiful thought," Daniella said. "It is the truth," Jack replied. He kissed the top of her head. "You are my home, Daniella. You and James and Clara, you are everything that matters." "And you are mine," Daniella said. She turned to look at him, this man who had risked everything for her, who had stood up to killers and said they would have to go through him first. This man who had kept his promise to protect her and had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. "I love you, Jack Yates. I love you more than words can express." "I love you too," Jack said, kissing her softly. "Today, tomorrow, and forever." They sat together as the last light faded from the sky and the stars came out one by one. The fireflies danced in the yard like tiny stars fallen to earth, and their children's laughter rang out in the warm night air. It was a perfect moment, one of thousands they had shared and thousands more they would share in the years to come. The threat that had brought them together was long gone, buried and forgotten. But the love that had bloomed in its wake continued to grow stronger with each passing day. They had started with nothing but danger and fear, but they had built something precious and lasting. They had built a family, a legacy, a life worth living. And every morning when Jack woke with Daniella beside him, he sent up a silent prayer of thanks for the day he had decided to stop and help a woman in trouble. That decision had changed everything. It had given him purpose, love, and a home. It had given him everything he had ever wanted and so much more. The years continued to pass in contentment. James grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with a natural way with horses that made him an invaluable help on the ranch. He was 19 in 1901, and Jack could see shadows of his own younger self in his son, that same restlessness and hunger to prove himself. But unlike Jack at that age, James had a stable home and parents who loved him deeply. Clara, at 17, was a beauty with a sharp mind and a kind heart. She had inherited her mother's business sense and helped Daniella manage the ranch accounts. She also had a talent for healing, having learned midwifery and basic medicine from the local doctor. People from miles around would come to the ranch seeking Clara's help when someone was sick or injured. In 1902, the family welcomed another addition when James married a sweet-natured girl named Alina from a neighboring ranch. The wedding was a grand affair, with half the county in attendance. Jack felt a bittersweet pang watching his son stand at the altar, remembering his own wedding day so many years before. Time moved so quickly, he thought. One moment James had been a baby in his arms, and now he was a man starting his own family. Alina fit into the family perfectly, treating Daniella like a second mother and doting on Jack. Within a year, she and James presented Jack and Daniella with their first grandchild, a boy they named Jackson after his grandfather. Holding little Jackson in his arms, Jack marveled at the passage of time and the continuation of legacy. Clara married in 1904 to a young lawyer from Sacramento named William Fletcher. The match worried Jack at first, thinking a city man might take his daughter away from the ranch, but William proved to be as adaptable as Jack himself had once been. He moved to Placerville, setting up a practice in town, but spent weekends at the ranch, quickly learning the rhythms of ranch life. As Jack entered his 50s, he felt the years in his bones more than he once had. The hard work of ranching took its toll, and there were mornings when his back ached and his joints protested. But he never complained. Every ache was earned honestly, every pain a reminder of the life he had lived and the family he had built. Daniella aged gracefully beside him. Her dark hair gained threads of silver, and fine lines appeared around her eyes. But to Jack, she was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her on that porch. She moved with the same quiet confidence, managed the ranch with the same capable hands, and looked at him with the same love that had sustained them through nearly 25 years of marriage. On a cool evening in October of 1908, exactly 25 years to the day after they had married, Jack planned a special surprise. He enlisted Clara and Alina's help, and when Daniella returned from town that afternoon, she found the yard transformed. Lanterns hung from the trees, flowers decorated every surface, and a small group of musicians played soft melodies. "What is all this?" Daniella asked, her eyes wide with surprise. 25 years ago today, you made me the happiest man alive by agreeing to be my wife," Jack said, taking her hands. "I wanted to celebrate that and celebrate you, and celebrate everything we have built together." Tears shimmered in Daniella's eyes. "I cannot believe you remembered." "I remember everything about that day," Jack said softly. "I remember how beautiful you looked in your mother's dress. I remember how my hands shook when I put the ring on your finger. I remember thinking that I was the luckiest man who ever lived because you chose me." "Oh, Jack," Daniella said, her voice breaking. "I am the lucky one. You saved my life and then you made it worth living." They danced under the lanterns as their family watched, James and Alina with their 3 children now, Clara and William with their infant daughter. Samuel was there too, old and gray but still spry, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. Friends and neighbors had been invited, and the celebration went late into the night. But the best moment came after everyone had gone home, and it was just Jack and Daniella, walking hand in hand down to their creek as they had done so many times over the years. The moon was full, painting everything in silver light, and the water burbled softly over the rocks. "I have been thinking," Daniella said as they stood under the willow tree, now large and ancient, its branches hanging low. "About that day you first came here, about how scared I was and how brave you were. Do you remember what you said to Cyrus Morrison?" "They go through me first," Jack said quietly. "I remember." "You meant it," Daniella said. "You were willing to die for me when you barely knew me." "I knew enough," Jack replied. "I knew you were worth fighting for, worth dying for, and I was right. You were worth everything." Daniella reached up and touched his face, tracing the lines that time had etched there. "I do not know what I did to deserve you, Jackson Yates, but I thank God every day that you walked into my life." "I am the one who should be grateful," Jack said. "You gave me a home when I had been wandering for years. You gave me a family when I thought I would always be alone. You gave me a purpose beyond just surviving day to day. You gave me everything, Daniella." They kissed under the willow tree, just as they had so many years before, and the love between them was as strong as ever. Stronger even because it had been tested and proven, strengthened by years of shared joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. The years continued their steady march. Jack and Daniella grew older but never grew apart. They spent their days working side by side on the ranch, though James and Alina gradually took over more of the daily operations. They spent their evenings on the porch, watching the sunset and counting their blessings. Their family continued to grow. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with noise and laughter. Clara had 4 children in total, and James had 5. Sunday dinners became grand affairs with 3 generations gathered around the long table, telling stories and sharing news. In 1915, as the world beyond their quiet valley erupted into war, Jack and Daniella celebrated their 67th and 65th birthdays respectively. They had been married for 32 years, and Jack marveled at how quickly it had passed. It seemed like only yesterday that he had been a young drifter with nothing but his horse and his gun. And now he was an old man surrounded by more love and family than he had ever imagined possible. One spring morning in 1916, Jack woke to find Daniella still asleep beside him, which was unusual. She was typically the early riser, up before dawn to start breakfast. He watched her sleeping peacefully, her hair now completely silver, spread across the pillow. She looked so peaceful that he did not want to wake her. But as the minutes passed and she still did not stir, a cold fear gripped his heart. He reached over and gently shook her shoulder. "Daniella, sweetheart, wake up." She did not respond. Jack's hands began to tremble as he checked for a pulse, for breathing, for any sign of life. But Daniella was still and silent, her face peaceful and calm. She had passed away in her sleep, slipping from this world into the next without pain or fear. "No," Jack whispered, his voice breaking. "No, please no." He gathered her into his arms, holding her close, and wept like he had not wept since he was a boy. His Daniella, his love, his partner in everything, was gone. After 33 years of marriage, after building a life together and raising a family and growing old side by side, she had left him behind. The family gathered for the funeral, all of them heartbroken. Daniella had been the center of their world, the matriarch who had held everyone together. They buried her beside her parents on the hill, under a large oak tree that overlooked the ranch. The service was attended by hundreds, a testament to how many lives she had touched. Jack stood at the graveside, supported by James and Clara, and felt like a piece of himself had been buried with her. How was he supposed to go on without her? How was he supposed to wake up every morning knowing she would not be there beside him? In the weeks that followed, Jack moved through life like a ghost. He went through the motions, eating when food was placed in front of him, sleeping when exhaustion overtook him, but there was no joy in anything. The ranch that had been their shared dream now felt hollow without her presence. James and Clara took turns staying with him, worried about leaving him alone. His grandchildren visited constantly, trying to cheer him up with their childish energy. But nothing seemed to reach him. He had lost his anchor, his North Star, his reason for everything. One evening, about 2 months after Daniella's death, Jack walked down to the creek alone. He stood under the willow tree where they had shared so many moments, where they had first kissed, where they had declared their love over and over through the years. He closed his eyes and could almost feel her there beside him. "I miss you," he said aloud to the empty air. "I miss you so much it feels like I am being torn apart. I do not know how to do this without you, Daniella. I do not know how to be just me when I have been we for so long." The wind rustled through the willow branches, and for just a moment, Jack could have sworn he heard her voice. "Keep living," it seemed to say. "Live for both of us now. Live for our children and grandchildren. Live because our love deserves to have a legacy." Jack opened his eyes, and while the grief was still there, heavy and painful, he felt something else too. A sense of purpose. A determination to honor Daniella's memory by continuing to nurture what they had built together. He returned to the house and for the first time since her death, really looked around. He saw the touches of Daniella everywhere, in the curtains she had sewn, in the pictures on the walls, in the carefully tended garden she had loved. This house, this ranch, was a monument to their love. And it was his job now to protect it, to keep it thriving for their family. Slowly, painfully, Jack began to heal. He would never stop missing Daniella, never stop wishing she was still beside him, but he learned to carry the grief without letting it crush him. He spent more time with his grandchildren, teaching them the things his father had taught him, and the things he had learned in his years of wandering. He told them stories about their grandmother, keeping her memory alive through words and laughter. He worked on the ranch again, though he left the heavy labor to younger men. He focused on the horses, breeding and training, finding solace in the simple pleasure of working with animals. He made sure to walk down to the creek every evening, spending a few quiet moments under the willow tree, talking to Daniella as if she could hear him. Maybe she could. He liked to think so. Years passed. Jack grew older and frailer, but his mind remained sharp and his heart remained full of love for his family. He celebrated his 75th birthday surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The Yates Ranch had become a true dynasty, known throughout California for quality stock and honest dealing. On a warm evening in August of 1923, 40 years to the day after his wedding, Jack felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. He had spent the day with family, laughing and reminiscing, and now as the sun set, he walked down to the creek one final time. He sat under the willow tree, leaning back against the trunk, and closed his eyes. He was so tired, bone-deep tired, but it was a good tired. The tired of a life well lived, of work well done, of love fully given and received. "I am coming, Daniella," he whispered to the twilight. "I have lived like you wanted me to. I have taken care of our family, but I am ready now, ready to be with you again." As the stars began to appear overhead one by one, Jack felt his heart beat slow. There was no pain, no fear. Just a gentle letting go, like drifting off to sleep after a long, fulfilling day. James found him the next morning, sitting peacefully under the willow tree, a small smile on his lips. He had passed away quietly in the night, in the place where he and Daniella had shared so many precious moments. They buried him beside Daniella on the hill, and the entire county turned out for the funeral. Jack Yates had become something of a legend, the drifter cowboy who had ridden in to save a woman from outlaws and stayed to build an empire of love and family. The Yates Ranch continued for generations, each one adding to the legacy that Jack and Daniella had started. The story of how they met, of the outlaws who had wanted revenge and the cowboy who had said they would have to go through him first, was told and retold until it became part of family lore, a reminder of the power of courage and love. The willow tree by the creek grew large and ancient, its branches hanging down like a blessing over the ground where Jack and Daniella had first declared their love. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right, you could almost hear two voices laughing together, forever young, forever in love, forever together in the place where it all began. Their love story had started with danger and defiance, with a cowboy willing to stand between a woman and harm, but it had grown into something far more beautiful. It had become a testament to the enduring power of love, to the families we build and the legacies we leave, to the choices we make that define not just our own lives, but the lives of generations to come. Jack and Daniella Yates had loved deeply and truly, and that love had transformed everything it touched. It had turned a struggling ranch into a thriving enterprise, had created a family that would endure for generations, had proven that sometimes the greatest treasures come from the most unexpected places. And in the end, is that not what every great love story teaches us? That love is worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth nurturing through all the years and all the challenges life brings. That when you find someone worth standing in front of, worth saying, "They go through me first," for you hold on to them with everything you have and never let go. Jack Yates had been a drifter looking for work when he rode onto the Owens Ranch that fateful day in 1883. He had left behind a legacy of love, family, and devotion that would be remembered long after his name was forgotten. He had lived a life that mattered, loved a woman with all his heart, and built something that would outlast them both. And really, what more could any person ask for than that?